Welcome back to 3 Point Firefighter, the podcast where I have conversations with firefighters all around the country on all things fire service related, especially those three things that I think are the foundation for any good firefighter: pride, training, and physical fitness. I would like to take this time to say a big thank you to all those people who are listening. I started this as a hobby and wasn't sure what to expect, and this podcast has been downloaded all around the world. I'm averaging about 100 downloads a week, and that's quite a surprise considering I expected around 99 less than that a week. But I would like to take this time to have a special shout out to Linköping, Östergötland in Sweden. And I hope I pronounced that right. I've had a few downloads there, and I would love to talk to a firefighter around that area. My email is going to be in the description. If you'd like to talk to me, shoot me an email. Okay, so today's guest is Tim Kron. Cappy Kron is a truck captain with the New Albany Fire Department, my department. Tim comes from a long line of firefighters. He's part of a Untitled Chapter. He teaches with Oath Keepers. And he did more of his share on the ambulance than most people. He also did double duty as our EMS director as well. He's now in Truck One and is very happy going back into burning buildings. We talk about his career and his passion for the job, EMS, a little about culture. And Tim also works for our county health department and has been on the front line of the COVID response. We talk about COVID, if it's real, and do masks work? Spoiler alert, it is real and they do work. We talk about vaccines and how much they can help. I hope you enjoy it. And with that, here's Tim Kron. Cappy Kron, how are you, brother?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you doing the podcast with me. And you're the second person to do the Have a Drink series with me. So what are you drinking?
Oh, I am drinking a little bit of Bardstown Burns small batch, and I've made an old-fashioned with it. So
let's see it. Let's see it here.
There we go, right there.
Now, you make pretty fancy drinks. I've seen your Instagram. You make fancy drinks. You do the one where you smoke it or something. What is that?
Yep, I can make a smoked old-fashioned. I've got a couple different ways of doing that. And you know what? I probably should have done that for this podcast, but I didn't even think about it.
There you go.
That would have been good. That would have been, perfect, wouldn't it?
That would have been perfect. So I'm having a Hofbrau Hefeweizen.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Never heard of it.
It is delicious. It is delicious. So I like to start out now. For those people that don't know, you and I have worked together for the past 16, 17 years. Right. But for those that don't know anything about where we work, why don't you tell us a little bit about the department and a little bit where you fit into that department?
Well, it's a career department. So it's a all-paid department here in Southern Indiana, across from Louisville, Kentucky. We're a bedroom community right across the Ohio River. We're a 5-station department. We have roughly 80 personnel with 5 engines, actually 4 engines, 1 quint, and 1 dedicated ladder company, and then an on-duty major.
Okay. So you mentioned you have 4 engines, or we have 4 engines. We have a quint and a truck, right?
Right.
So could you tell me the difference between the truck and the quint?
Well, I said we have a dedicated truck company.
There you go.
It is in fact also a quint, we, although it's not utilized like other departments would, so that's why I tried to not say that to misrepresent us, because it really is typically a dedicated truck company. Although I have laid lines from it before, and I have stretched hose from it before.
Well, I think the only reason I'd like to be the chief of the department for just one day so I could officially change it to Quint 1, just to watch everybody lose their mind.
Oh, and they absolutely would lose their mind. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, no doubt about it.
So I tell you what, to give you a little heads up to where I'm coming from with you. So when I first came on the job, you were on the ambulance, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I noticed, and I've been on the ambulance in other departments and stuff, and I know what it's like in the middle of the night to make one of those frequent flyer runs, and you're a little bit aggravated. You've been run all night and all that. But here's one of the things I noticed about you. I've made several runs with you when you're on the ambulance, and you're exactly the same at 3 a.m. after 12 runs as you are at 9 o'clock in the morning for a first run. You're polite. You do your job great. You're not cranky. My question to you is, because I haven't experienced a lot of that, and myself included, how in the hell do you do that?
Early on, I had great advice given to me by now passed away, was the deputy chief at the time, Frank Beck, who was the head of EMS at that time. And when I started in EMS back in '85, even before I came on the New Albany Fire Department, when I was in a private ambulance service, I rode with Frank to get my preceptorship time in. And Frank told me early on after, and I'll be quite honest with you, it was after a run where we had a homeless person that fell off a train track. And this guy smelled so bad. And you were in the back, and he was pretty bad, but I just couldn't even get past the smell. And Frank was in there it didn't even faze him. And we got to the hospital, and we got this guy to the hospital, and I told Frank then, I said, how did you just do that? He goes, Tim, let me give you some advice. He goes, treat every person as if that was your family member laying there. And he goes, if you do that, he goes, you will go a long way in this business. So that's what I tried to do. Have I always done that? No, there's been a couple times that, I've lost my cool on people. But for the most part, I have tried to treat everybody, no matter race, creed, color, socioeconomic status, the same way. So I hope I've imparted that in some people anyway.
Well, I mean, like I say, you affected me because I remember one of the first, I can remember the house, not the location, but the inside of the house. I remember this person, we've made a bunch of runs on it. I was new to New Albany about a year in, and the engine got there. We got there first, and this guy was giving us nothing but grief, just miserable. And then you walk in just as polite, nice. He immediately became nicer, got on the cot, got in the ambulance and went to the hospital. That always stuck with me because I've seen over many, many years, people take offense to having to make runs after midnight, especially if it's something that they don't think is actually all that important. And again, I'm sure I've done it when I was on the ambulance too. So, you have affected me a little bit like that. I'm sure it affected other people the same way.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope I have. I hope that I've imparted. I hope once my day is done on this department, that people will look back and say, he came in every day and he gave it 100%. Because I try to impart that even today as the captain on the truck company. I have told my guys, and I know that you're aware of this, but when we arrive, I'm the first one in the building, and I will be the last one to come out of that from my crew. And I preach that and I live that because that is early on is what my dad taught me is you give it 110% until you can't anymore. And whether I've been here 1 year or 33 years, I owe it to this community to give it my all.
Well, I've noticed that also, and not just me, other people in our department have noticed that to where you're one of the few people, there's a handful of people in our particular job. Now, we work with a lot of great people, don't get me wrong, but there's a handful of people that stick out to me that I've always said they're going to be late for their own retirement party because they're going to be training, or maybe, cleaning a truck or something. And you're definitely one of those people. You give it 110% all across the board. Now, you were on the ambulance for how many years?
About 3 weeks shy of 20 years.
Jesus. Oh, my goodness.
But for your listeners, they need to understand that we were dual role department. So not only were we at the time EMT intermediates with the state, we were also firefighters. So, it was the best of both worlds. And when I came on, our squad or the ambulance at the time made every single fire run that there was in the city. So that's where I wanted to be. I never wanted to miss a fire. I still don't. Right. And so that's why I got involved in EMS. It really wasn't because of the love of EMS. I just didn't want to miss a fire. I then fell in love with EMS, and I fell in love with taking care of people. That's why I started working part-time at the local emergency room for a while, because I really do like emergency medicine. But that's early on is why I got on the ambulance, was because I didn't want to miss a fire.
Just being greedy?
Absolutely being greedy. Absolutely.
Now, you come from a long line of firefighters, and you've created a few firefighters along the way. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I'm third generation firefighter here. My grandfather spent, I think, 24 years on the department here in New Albany. He retired as chief. Then my father, of course, was here for almost 40 plus years, retired as an assistant chief here, and then went on to be the fire chief of Georgetown Township until the day of his passing. And then, of course, I came along, and then, of course, now I'm proud that, my son has followed me in the family business and is now, a professional firefighter over in Louisville, Kentucky, in Jefferson County. So, hopefully one day, hopefully not in the too distant future, he will be able to join the ranks of New Albany. I would love that more than anything, but yeah. Well, it's a family business for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So was your son, Joe, did he take to it right away, or did you have to tell him that's the only job he's ever going to be allowed to have?
No, you know what? And people have asked me that, but people ask me that about my father. Did your dad just, demand that you come on the job? And I'm like, no, it really didn't. Early, even in high school, I wanted to be an architect or a weather guy. Most people that know me know I'm a nut when it comes to weather. So, in high school, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a weather guy. So I studied all about being a meteorologist. But at the same time, I would go to the firehouse and see my father almost every day. And, at first it was, every few weeks I would stop by and see him. And then it developed every week. And then it was like, gosh, when does he work again? I want to go to the firehouse because I love stopping by and seeing the guys.
Right.
And I loved the camaraderie that I saw at the firehouse. And, I just fell in love with it. And so right out of high school, I thought, you know what? I think that I've started to get my fire science degree at a local community college here. And then I started working as a private ambulance service until I was fortunate enough to 2 months after my 21st birthday, I was hired with the New Albany Fire Department. That was 33 years ago. And I tried to do the same thing with my son. I didn't force him into the business. I let him develop that love himself. I'm so grateful that he had the opportunity to go to Prosser Vocational School, which is a part of our high school system that, it really is new. It's only been in existence about 5 or 6 years now, but they've already produced a lot of great firefighters coming out of it. One of them is Brian Snyder. So he took that class, fell in love with it, and the rest, as they say, is history, I guess. So hopefully, he'll be the fourth Kron on the New Albany Fire Department at some point.
Well, that's great. That's great. Like you'd stated earlier, we're kind of a littler department, but we have a ton of father-son combos on our department, or have had.
We do, from the Dugganses to the Wisemans to the Torans to the Sparks.
The Mans.
That's the one thing.
Your own sergeant.
my own sergeant, right? Yeah, the Mans. Right. That is the one thing about our fire department that I wish people knew. I wish people knew just how good of a department we really do have. You're not going to see us in magazines like a New York City or a Philadelphia or even Louisville, but we have some really awesome firefighters, some aggressive firefighters. And, I've tried to point that out on our Facebook page, which is, something that I run. And I just love to highlight our department because we really do. The citizens here, they just have no idea how fortunate they are to have the firefighters that we have protecting them.
I agree. You've heard me in trainings probably 1,000 times mention how good I think we are with the small amount of people we have at a fire and how much we do. Like you mentioned, we have basically 5 engines and a truck company, and it's not uncommon to have 2 or 3 fires, and we manage. We do very well with less people. And on top of that, I know we do confined space, rope rescue, swift water rescue, you name it, we do it. And I'll agree. Yeah, we definitely knock it out of the park there. And I think a lot of it is just necessity. We have to. We have no choice.
Absolutely. So, yep, absolutely. And have we had our mess ups before? Absolutely.
What?
But, yeah, I know.
Hush your mouth, Cap.
Yeah, not on B crew, never on B crew, but yeah, I've heard other crews have issues.
Wait, so, we have other crews besides B crew? I had no idea.
Right, exactly.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So you mentioned you've been in on a long time, and for those that can't really see Tim, he's extremely aged. You would probably look around 80, 90 years old. Is that right?
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I joke. The culture. So every time I've had a podcast, it comes up one way or another about culture. What has changed, do you think, from when you came on in the fire service, 80 years ago to now, What's the biggest difference that you've noticed?
Well, I think it's the fire service is just a reflection of society in general. I don't think the fire service as a whole is as close as it used to be. You know, we love to use terms brotherhood and sisterhood, but I'm not for sure that a lot of members know how to live that anymore. I can remember early on, you know, I was 18 or 19 years old. You know, my dad would say, "Hey, come on, get in the truck. We're going over to so-and-so's house." And I'm like, "What are we doing there?" "Well, we're going to re-roof his house for him." And, you know, guys would, you know, say, "Hey, I need to paint my house." And, you know, 15 to help paint his house,
Right.
or put a roof on a home or stuff like that. You don't see that much anymore. You know, that's why I have tried to continue my Christmas party that I put on for our department, because I want guys to come back together. Now, I'm not saying that our department isn't close, because they are. I mean, you know, the groups that hang out, but I'm talking about as a whole. You know, you don't see that as much in the fire service anymore, that whole, the camaraderie in a department as a whole.
Right.
And I think that's what's missing right now. But I think that's what's missing in society. So a fire department is just reflective of its community. And I think you see that as well.
I agree. You know, I've tried to do a lot of brotherhood stuff for the fire department, and, you know, like golf outings and Operation Brotherhood, stuff like that. And I noticed the same people started coming to those, you know,
Right.
And the same people would tell me they would never come to those. So I kind of, for the most part, kind of gave up on it for that exact reason, because the people that understand brotherhood and believe in brotherhood aren't going to change.
Right.
But the people that don't give two shits about it, you're not going to convince them either. So yeah, you got a smaller group. When I first came on, I guess it was Lexington. It's like you said, somebody moved. You could have somebody move from one house to another in a few hours because everybody was there.
Yep.
So I agree. I've noticed the same thing.
Absolutely.
Do you see a trend where we're going with that?
Well, I don't think that it's I don't think it's a lost art. I mean, I think I'm pretty fortunate on my crew that we are still fairly close and do a lot of things. I mean, you know, if you just like you said, if you have somebody that needs to be moved, I mean, there'll be several of us that'll show up to help that person move, or their girlfriend move, or mother move, or whatever. You still see a lot of that. So I'm not saying it's dead and gone, by no means. And I do hope, you know, with these younger guys coming in, that, you know, that they can pick up the torch, so to speak, and carry it on, and maybe, that maybe continue it.
Another thing about you is you're an instructor. You're passionate as an instructor. You're one of the guys that I got like 3 or 4 guys, not even 4, probably 3 guys that I can go to and say, "Hey, can you teach this for me? Or can you give me some information?" You're always there. You know, you've taught quite a few classes for me. And I think you're an excellent instructor. Of course, that comes from your father, I'm sure. I'm sure he imparted that on you. And it's bled over into a couple of things. So you're an oath keeper, and you're also in your local Fools chapter. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Oath Keepers?
Well, the Oath Keepers Conference that happens up in northern Ohio in the typically last part of September. I've been fortunate enough to be invited to be a part of their instructor cadre. I absolutely love what they're doing and the message that they're doing it with. It's a group of guys, and then, you know, it kind of started with Chris Gilpin, which is up in around the Cincinnati area. I don't think Chris gets near enough accolades in what he has done for the fire service. That's the one thing that, you know, I hate about some of these larger conferences, is that they have priced themselves out of existence. You know, when a firefighter has to pay $500 to come receive an 8-hour class, it's just insane. It is insane to me. And it's insane that some of the larger corporations have allowed that to happen. That's why I love the Oath Keepers. The price is minimal for training. You bring a lot of credible people from the fire service there that share their passion. And so it's a great conference. It's a 2.5-day conference now.
Right.
I would highly recommend your listeners that are on here to try and sign up to attend that if at all possible. Because we have people from all over. We've had people from the West Coast show up, from the East Coast, large departments, small departments, and they all, at the end of the day, come up and thank us for and take something away. And I'm part of the truck side of that. So they'll spend one day with the truck company operations and one day with the engine company operations. And then the Fools chapter, we're not unlike across the nation. The reason I love the Fools chapter and its inception anyway was because, again, you're teaching other firefighters the art of firefighting, and you're doing it with minimal cost. So, most of our classes are either they're $25 for people to attend. And that's what we're here for. That's what the term brotherhood and sisterhood has meant. That is to take care of the people coming, on after you, to teach this art of firefighting so that it can be continued on. And I shouldn't have to charge somebody $500 a person to do that.
Right.
And that's why I love the Fools chapters, and that's why I love Oath Keepers, because it's not done that.
I noticed years ago, everything used to be fire schools. You'd basically have 2 fire schools a year, a spring and a fall. And then fire schools started fading away a little bit, and you start seeing more and more conferences pop up. And now there's tons of them. And some, though, to be fair, there are some like what Snodgrass does, Michael Snodgrass,
right.
And then there's people like, I just got through talking with Mark Alone, and, he doesn't really charge hardly anything to go do, you know what? Mark was supposed to come speak at our
right.
fire school. Yeah.
Right.
And he doesn't charge a whole lot. So there's people out there that, they care about the service, they care about the industry, and they're willing to give their time, and they're not looking to get rich on it.
Right.
I do know of several that, do try to make lots of money and actually have a rider in their contract for certain things.
Absolutely. Some really big name in the fire service that make a whole lot of money to open their mouths. And I can't do that. I'm not that person.
So there's a captain that is on our job, Engine 1, your crew, and me and him will teach outside of the department from time to time. And when we talk about what we're going to charge, his thing is, let's just charge our overtime rate. So for a day of missing overtime, basically, which isn't that much,
No.
He's kind of got me in that mindset. And I've never once taught a class and thought about money I'm going to make, For me, I love networking. I'm kind of obsessed. I don't know if you've been listening to my podcast. I'm a little bit obsessed with shifts, like the 48, 96 and all that.
Yeah.
So I love when I go around to different parts of the country. And that's one of the first things I'll ask, hey man, what hours do you work?
Right.
One of the things I like about you, I'm kind of impressed by, is that you do put your passion. It's not just fire service. You also put as much work into the other job you have, which you work for our Floyd County Health Department. More specifically, you're kind of in charge of the COVID response for our entire county, right?
Right.
You and I both at the beginning of the 1-9, you and I worked at the EOC, and that's when I really got to see how your passion for work kind of translates over. Okay. So you don't, let me give you an example. When I have any part-time jobs, I barely put any effort into it. So I used to work at a Home Depot years ago. I cannot tell you how much bad advice I gave and how many shitty decks are probably built in the Lexington area, because I didn't give a fuck. But I did witness through all the EOC stuff how hard you worked, and you took it very seriously. Now, obviously, a couple of facts about COVID. Let's get them out of the way. It's not real. You don't need masks. And it really doesn't. It's just exactly like the flu. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. You're going to make me drink even more in this podcast. You know that, right?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your job with EOC and what you've come to learn over the past several months about COVID, and give us some good information.
Well, like you said, I'm the emergency preparedness coordinator with the Floyd County Health Department. That's my part-time job / full-time job / 24/7 job right now. Before COVID, it was a pretty easy job, easy peasy, just putting in numbers, making sure equipment was ready to go, attend various trainings. When I first took that job, about a year into it, that's when Ebola hit the scene. And so we went into this whole Ebola response, which, obviously ended up not being much of anything here in the United States. And then, along come this virus that nobody had heard about. About this time last year is when it came on our radar. And then we all know what has happened in 2020 with this dumpster fire, now commonly referred to as coronavirus. We quickly, once we had the first case here in Floyd County, we quickly spun up the local EOC and headed operational from the March all the way through June. And in fact, it's still in operation, more virtually now than anything. Our local health officer, Dr. Harris, came to me and said, "Hey, I've got a position for you. Would you like to take it?" I was like, "Sure, I'll take it," and that'd be kind of an easy job. But it has turned out anything but easy with coronavirus. As of this taping, the vaccine is rolling out. If I had to tell any advice on here, I have listened to several doctors. I have asked several doctors their opinion of the vaccine. I even watched a podcast the other night with one of the physicians from FDNY on, who said that, the vaccine is a very safe vaccine. I approached it by going to our health doctor, Tom Harris, which was also the fire department doctor for years and years and years. They said, "Tim, let me tell you, I'm going to be taking the vaccine, as will my entire family." And that was good enough for me. I didn't have to listen to anybody else. I've trusted that man. I've watched that man save lives that nobody else could. So when he told me it was safe, that was good enough for me. So yes, coronavirus is real. It is spreading. And in fact, this weekend news is breaking that, England and the UK is now going back to a lockdown because
they have a new strain, right?
Strand of the virus coming out. So we're going to have to watch that and see how that plays out. That could affect us here in the United States. It has become an absolute political nightmare, because it's one side pointing at the other side and saying, you've done it wrong, or you're not doing enough, or you're doing too much. And it's put us in public health right in the middle. And so, and that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up about my department or our department, because I want to toot our horn a little bit, because, early on, it was thought that we would probably do a response car so that for EMS runs. So we limited the amount of firefighters going out on runs, because early on we really didn't know a whole lot about the virus, and there was a whole lot of misinformation or a lot of unknown out there. And when the chief called and said, "Hey, this is what we want to do," and I think you were in part of that conversation as well. I thought, man, who in the world are they going to get to work that truck? Who's going to want to go out and make COVID runs and not have any idea what they're going on,
Right.
And I was so proud to see the list of guys and gals that stood up and said, "I'll take a shift on that rig."
Yep.
And I again, that goes back to our department and the amount of people we have dedicated to taking care of our community. A lot of those people said, "Yep, I will take a shift, or I'll work the entire time you need me." And I thought that was just outstanding, so that I was really proud of our department then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look back on it from the beginning to what we know now. I'm probably more scared, but in a different way, because I feel like at the beginning, we didn't have a whole lot of information, and we look at it now. And I'll tell you what, let me back up a second. Here's what, so there was a time where I was hearing more so than now that it's just like the flu. It's just like the flu. It's just like the flu. And you said something, and I don't know if you remember this, but you said something to me that just kind of made me understand instantly. You said, "Jake, how many people do you know that have died from the flu?" And I said, "None." "How many do you know that died of COVID?" And at the time it was 3, which now it's more, obviously. And that just kind of really blew me away. And that's something I've been trying to use for some of these, I hate to say the word idiots, but idiots that don't understand science.
Right.
Science isn't really iffy, in my opinion, but
no, it's not. No, not at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of use that when some people, and unfortunately, I do talk to some people that are like, "Oh, it's just like the flu." I'm like, name somebody that's been in the hospital for the flu that you know. They can't. Somebody that's died of the flu, they can't. You
Right.
know. But flip
Yep.
it around to COVID. Um, but so you talked about the vaccine. I'm getting mine tomorrow. I'm getting my first vaccine tomorrow.
Me too.
Let me ask you this, okay? There's two types of vaccines: the Pfizer one, the Moderna one, and Pfizer's got to be super cold. Moderna not so much. If you had a preference, would it be one that you would take, or do you feel they're equally good?
Well, they both use the messenger RNA technology, so it's going to go into your body and it's going to teach cells how to repel. But in layman terms, teach the cell how to repel the coronavirus. Okay, and so they're both equal in my opinion. One thing about the Pfizer is that it can be used on people as young as 16. Moderna, just because of the simple testing of it, it's still strictly 18 and above. Now, once this comes out, we may be closer to vaccinating the general public. There is rumor, back room chatter that the public vaccine may be the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and it's going to go before approval sometime in the middle of January. The nice thing about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is it's going to be a one-time dose. You won't need a booster. So that's going to make it a lot easier to vaccinate once we get to that phase, which I'm hoping is either February or latest March. But yeah, I would not have any trouble getting the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine, either one.
So if I understand it correctly, the Moderna and the Pfizer one, you get your initial shot, and then one of them is 21 days later, the other is 28 days later, you get the booster shot or the second shot. Now,
That's correct.
At one point, is it working to where you don't have to worry about, or not worry as much, I should say, about contracting the coronavirus? Now, I know we're still going to do our social distancing, wear our mask, all of our responsible stuff. But once you take the second part of the vaccine, when does science say, okay, you should be covered?
2 weeks. That's what they're saying. From the initial dose, 2 weeks you should have, and I hate to put this out in the public, but I will, and firefighters take this to say, well, I'll get my one dose and not the second. The first dose is going to give you about 85% protection. Okay. So within about 2 weeks, you'll have about 85% protection from the coronavirus. The booster finishes it off and makes it that almost 100% protection, 97, 98%.
Okay, good deal.
But they're saying the body's going to take about 2 weeks to develop the antibodies internally, and then you should be good to go.
And we still have to wear a mask. We still have to social distance.
Well, you're going to be protected from coronavirus. And people have asked me that, once you get the vaccine, are you just going to not wear your mask? No, I understand it. And yes, in theory, you'll be protected from the coronavirus because it's going to take away the need to quarantine if you've been exposed to somebody because you'll be protected. But I think it's more the social view. Not wearing a mask right now. I'm going to continue to wear mine until a lot more people stop wearing their masks because I don't want to get beat up.
Right. Well, I wonder too if once these become available to the public, if if you want to book a flight, if you have to prove somehow that you've got the vaccine. I mean, it's going to change. There's going to be a lot of our life has changed so much in such a short amount of time. With the vaccine, it's going to change again. But I think we'd be kidding ourselves to say it's going to go right back to normal.
It's not. No, I hope this time next year we're a lot more back to normal than people think we will be. I do think the vaccine is going to roll out quicker than most people anticipate. I hope there's a lot more buy-in, and I think, although early on there won't be, I think the more and more people get the vaccine, the more and more people will buy into it and get the vaccine. Anyway, I've already seen it. I've already seen people that even on my Facebook page would sit there and say, I'm not getting the vaccine, but now they're already posting, hey, I got my reservation, so, I think if there's a way to end this and get out of this pandemic and stop this chain of sick and dying people that we have, I'm hoping the vaccine is it, and I hope that the majority of people take it.
I know it's probably too soon to even speculate on something like this, but I'm just interested with what they talked about being released at in UK with the newer strain, where the vaccination we'll be getting plays into fighting that one off as well.
I read some data just before I got on this podcast, and that it says that right now it does not appear that that this will be stronger than the vaccine. It appears that the vaccine will be able to handle this strain as well.
Well, see, that's another difference between you and me. I talked about how hard you work on your first job, second job, and probably your third job. You talked about reading stuff on COVID right before the podcast. I was on Pornhub looking up clown stuff. Right. So you're making me feel worse.
Right. Yeah. Well, it happens. It happens. Right. I don't know what that site is. I've never heard of it. So.
Well, I've got all kinds of pictures, stuff I've uploaded to myself, artistic stuff. But
Right. I think the one thing that has baffled me right now is the increase in suicide rates among first responders. I'm trying to wrap my head around why we are seeing such a drastic increase in suicides. I wonder if it is more related to just society in general and not so much the job, because we all see bad things. But I don't want to say, I'm the old hardened guy, but back in the day, we made way more auto accidents that involve fatalities than we do now, simply because the autos are so more well made than they were back then.
Yes.
So I don't know that it's that, although fire deaths remain constant for some reason. Most departments don't see that many fire deaths. So I wonder, and I've always wondered this, if we're not setting up new people to fail early on. And what I mean by that is, I wonder if we're forgetting to tell these new people coming on to the job that you're not going to save everybody. In fact, you're going to lose far more than you will ever save. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It's just the nature of the business. Now, am I saying, don't give it 100%? No, not at all. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I want my guys to give 100%. I want them to give 110% to try to save a life. That's why I think I have continued to train my entire life, because when I lose somebody, at least I can go back and say, you know what? I gave it my all, and I did everything that I could to say it wasn't in the cards. But I think some instructors out there, especially in the EMS realm, set this false expectation that, man, you're going to save everybody. And if you don't, it's your fault. And I think that puts a mindset in these young people that, man, if I lose somebody, holy crap, which, I'm a God-fearing person. And I believe that, that in destiny. So sometimes, it's just in the cards that these people are not going to make it, no matter what we do. I have made runs on an ambulance where I had a 40-year-old guy collapse in front of his family, and CPR was initiated right away. We were just around the corner, so my squad was there within 2 or 3 minutes of this guy coding. We did everything we could, guy, and he didn't make it. A healthy guy, not a thing wrong with him, but he didn't make it. But then I turn around and I think about the 80-year-old lady who went into cardiac arrest, who was raising her adult child that had special needs, who was confined to a wheelchair. Okay. Her mother went into cardiac arrest. This young lady had to crawl across the floor to a phone and dial 911. We then had to get there and then force entry into this house that was well locked, get to this old lady, and we start CPR and do all of our magic things to her, and I'll be damned if she didn't survive. So sometimes you got to wonder, okay, here's a 40-year-old man by all rights should have survived that incident, but didn't, and an 80-year-old lady that by all rights should have passed didn't. So sometimes I think it's just fate. It is just in the cards for these people to live or die.
And it's hard to teach newer people to accept failure, because in some regards, that's what you're doing. It's like, to your point, you're like, okay, by the way, we're teaching you CPR, and for the rest of your career, you're going to re-up it every 2 years, and you're going to do CPR a lot. But you're not going to save a lot of people doing CPR. You're just not. The majority of people don't. Now, one of the things I like to teach, I'm sure you've heard it before, is, you may not bring them back, but if you continue to do CPR, you might be saving some of those organs if they are, an organ donor. It is difficult. It is difficult. To bring up Michael Snodgrass again, he is currently in a project right now working on, and I hope I got this right, a documentary about first responder and suicide. If you know anything about Michael, I don't think he sleeps. I think, right. I imagine he just, when everybody else goes to bed, he's like, all right, I need to do something else for the fire service. He's always doing something. So I know he's got that one kind of locked and loaded. For me, though, I got to be honest with you talking about it. So when people that aren't firefighters have asked me in the past about horrible runs and stuff, of course, most firemen I know, I'm one of them, I don't like to share the stuff that's in my head. I figure I'm the one that gets paid to see that stuff. I don't want to put that vision in somebody else's head, but it's rarely the torn up bodies that ever really affected me. It's, because it doesn't seem real to me. So if you see somebody in a really bad car wreck and their body is destroyed, that's less bothersome to me than something else. Like, so if I was to explain to people some of my worst runs, they would be like, what's so bad about that? It's just a mental game for me. I've seen things and heard things that break your heart and that you carry them around forever, but it's not the car wrecks or people ran over by the trains or anything like that. It's just whatever that moment brings to your brain, opens up that part of your brain that says, wow, this is really sad and you're a part of it. It's hard to do what we do. It really is. And when you do it as long as we've done, you have a lot of ghosts. You really do. I used to have he was a truck captain in Lexington. I was stationed with Bob Abbott, always in a good mood, always joking around. And he would always tell me, he goes, those ghosts in the middle of the night, they're going to jump right up and go, ah. He'd always say that. And he would say it like we'd make horrible runs. And he would say that not to like diminish what we saw, but to put like a little bit of levity into the horrors that we're going to continue to see, really, honestly. Right. But I remember we'd make horrible runs. He'd go, they're going to jump up and see you in the middle of the night. And they do.
Yep. Yeah, I think one of the best analogies of that was the very first episode of Rescue Me, when the main character, Tommy Gavin, is walking around and all these people are following him and you don't know who those people are. And you keep wondering, he'd go in the firehouse and all these people would follow him. Or he'd be at home and all these people would be behind him. And it's not till the end of the show of that very first episode do you understand that those are the people that he couldn't save. Those are the ghosts that he was carrying around with him. And I thought, what a perfect way to symbolize what we go through. Right. We just talked about the firehouse the other day. I honestly cannot tell you the last old person that I made that was deceased, whether it was cardiac arrest or a car accident or anything. I really can't. But I can tell you exactly the last child I made. Right. The children will stay with you, and they will for the rest of your life. Every one of them has, or every incident where a child was involved. I can remember making an accident up on the interstate where we had a family that was returning home out west. That was on I-64 and their car had broken down, and they pulled over to wait for a wrecker, and a drunk driver came along and rear-ended them. And it just looked like a bomb had went off when we got there. And of course we're responding, and we're getting, the radios, starting to chatter that it's a fatality. There's, multiple people involved. So we pull up, the nice thing about, back then was, they would pretty well wait for the ambulance guys to get there and say, okay, who gets cut out first, who gets cut out second. And I walked up to this car that had just basically ripped in half. And there was a mother and a son up front that was both critical. In fact, I think one of them had bilateral femur fractures. And then in the back were two daughters. And the 12-year-old that ended up being deceased was in a space of about 6 inches. She was just completely just smashed. But her 7-year-old sister was unscathed, not even a scratch on her. And when I walked up to that car and I looked in the window, she looked up at me and she goes, "That's my sissy, and my sissy is dead." And when that last word left her mouth, I knew that was the first person we were cutting out of that car, was that little girl. Because more than anything, I wanted to get her away from her sister and away from what she was seeing as fast as we could. And so that's what we did. We got her out first and worked on mom and brother. And the three of them ended up surviving. You know, the one did not. There was a couple other critical people in a couple other cars involved in a semi. But I'll never forget the captain at the time, Captain Greg Voiles, found out who that family was and took up a donation and sent that out to that family for flowers for that little girl's funeral. So it's stuff like that you'll always remember, you know. But you know, I take their ghost or that memory of that run and I put it in a box and I put it in my subconscious somewhere. And every once in a while I'll pull that box out and I'll go over that run. But I try not to harp on it, because going back to Frank Beck, early on in this podcast, I talked about the other thing he told me was, Tim, don't ever dwell on a run, because in 5 minutes that radio is going to go off and somebody's going to need your help. And you need to be 100% focused on that next run, no matter what happened on that. It's always good to go back and replay what happened, but always remember there's always going to be that next patient or that next fire or whatever it may be.
That's the longer you do this job, there's so many obstacles we have to avoid as firefighters. We got to hope that we don't die of a heart attack on the fire ground. We got to hope that if we retire, we don't get cancer. And there's things in place to help us do that, but there's really not a whole lot to help us with the ghosts that we see and the thoughts that we carry around. And, you know, that's something that we're going to be, you know, dealing with for the rest of our lives. If we're lucky enough to get past heart attacks and cancer, right. And then the best we can hope for is being haunted by ghosts for the rest of our lives. I always wondered, Charlie, remember Charlie? What was his last name? He was over at the nursing home, Robert E. Lee. He'd come over with Sparky and them.
Charlie Howard?
Charlie Howard. Yeah. So for those that don't know, Charlie Howard lived a very long life after retiring. Good guy, hung around the firehouse, you know, up until the end. But every time I saw him, I always wondered the things that he saw.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was a fireman before airbags. He was a fireman before, you know, these UL studies. He was, a fireman. Yep. Fireman was a fireman. And horrible stuff that he had to carry around with him for the rest of his life. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think he was on when we lost the 7 kids back in late 70s or early 80s. It was on before I came on, but those guys that having to pull all those dead kids out of that house. I mean, I can't imagine having to live with that. But it's what you do when you sign on. It's kind of like Chief Croker's quote that the greatest heroism a firefighter does is the day he signs up to be a fireman. Yep. And that really truly is words. Anything, firehouse pranks and how, that's just a part of it. That's also a dying art, Gosh, some of the stuff that we have done in the firehouse back in the day would probably get us arrested now. But it was all a part, I guarantee you, all a part of building that, love for each other and that respect for that, from tying a guy up with duct tape and setting his bed along with his nightstand and working lamp outside of the firehouse right next to a Kroger store where the deliveries were being made at about 11 o'clock at night, and setting him out there. And you could hear the Kroger delivery people honking their horn if they would look over and see him laying in his bed with the nightlight on. And, Captain Boyer and myself at the time were like, yeah, you know what? It's starting to rain out there, so maybe we better go bring him in to, I had a battalion chief or assistant chief at the time, Larry Dennison, who's, since left us. He would love to, like 5 o'clock in the morning, he'd start a lawnmower up and run it through the bedroom, to wake everybody up because he had made coffee, or would hand us like $30 and say, hey, we just got off of a working fire, so run down to White Castle and get out the whole crew White Castle and bring it back to the firehouse. That's the kind of stuff that's, it's missing in the fire service now. There's still hazing going on, no doubt about it. And some of the stuff I kind of question, what's going on now, but it really is just that bond that I would love. I want my son to feel, that he's a part of. I want, all this younger generation to come in to think, that, gosh, this is what it's all about, because at any moment that bell could go off and it could be the last minute we have on earth. And, I love this job. I love, I'm going to hate retiring in a few years, which, it's going to be here before I know it. I'm going to hate walking out that door the last time.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got a little while longer, don't you? You got a few things that you want to do before you leave. You got plans for yourself, Yeah. I know you want, like you mentioned earlier, you really want to work with Joe, and I know your son is in the process. I think he's put in for getting on now.
Yeah, right? He's just on the short list, what I've been told. So my fingers are crossed. Yeah. So, but I am next in line for the assistant chief's position. And we have one leaving. So I would like to have that opportunity to be that for our department.
Now, you say assistant chief. We're on the same department. We don't have an assistant chief position.
I'm sorry, battalion
there
chief.
You go. There chief, you go.
Whatever we call them today, major, assistant chief, bat chief, whatever it is. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't want my opportunity. That's what my dad held when he left, and I would love to have that opportunity, just even if it's for a short time.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having goals. Too often in the fire service, if you have a goal that's above where you are now, people tend to shoot you down a little bit,
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of, be aggressive about your career.
Right. Right. Yeah. And then after that, who knows what happens, I got my pilot's license a couple of years ago, and, before COVID hit, I was intent on thinking about, being a commercial pilot when I left here, not so much to fly for, United or UPS or anything like that. But, my dream job would be to fly a little commuter plane from, here to the Bahamas, or the mainland to the Bahamas or something like that, because I do think I'll find myself, in my later years somewhere warm, not so much here, maybe hopefully somewhere in Florida, maybe the Alabama coast, somewhere there. And I would love to have a little flying job doing that in this, my working years anyway. And,
well, let's hear, if you want to be a pilot, we all know there's nothing hard to being a pilot. You push the button that says take off, right. Autopilot, then you push the button. Right. So to be a pilot, you got to have a good pilot voice. So let's hear your pilot voice.
Oh, no. Let's see. November 20312, holding short of 24, ready to take off. We'll stay clear class Charlie, and we'll take a left turn out to 090.
That's good, but here's what I was looking for. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking off in about an hour.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for.
We don't have passengers yet. It's funny you bring that up, because I wanted to fit this into the podcast about you talk about, it's easy to be a pilot, you're just pushing buttons, but in all honesty, you're not that far off. But what I wanted to bring up was, for these sergeants out there, apparatus operators, I love to get those guys going, because I would love to tell them, I can take a monkey and make it do your job, because I can take a monkey and make them pull two levers to get water and that's it, but there's so much more to being a sergeant, an apparatus operator. I've got one of the best in the business driving me on truck one with Sergeant Gary Mann, who just absolutely has everything in place for me. And I think that's a lost art in the fire service, is a good engine operator. I really do. I think, and I hate the fact that the fire service is going to this hiding the pump panel behind the compartment door. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. And that's a little bit of old school to me. But I think if you put something behind the compartment door, then it doesn't get checked as often as if it was staring you in the face,
Absolutely.
And I've got some people saying, oh, it's you're doing that to protect the pump, because of the road grime. Well, road grime on a pump comes from underneath, not on the side anyway.
Yes.
So I don't buy that, I think that's one of these, and you know the how I train my crew, and I know you've kind of started adapting that and sending it out to the other crews to watch different YouTube videos of fire, across the country. And that's the one thing about the fire service that I can see is, number one, is how poor of a job we are doing as the fire service as a whole of getting first water on a fire when a company pulls up. You'll see them almost have to have like a huddle out in front of a building before they, take the first line in, which I don't understand that. The other thing is that it's a lost art of truck work, because I can watch video after video of fires across the country from different fire departments where they make a remarkable stop on a building. And then 15 minutes later, you'll start seeing smoke rolling out of the eaves or out of a wall because they didn't go in and open up properly, because they didn't, too many fire departments are relying solely on the tick camera to say whether a fire is out.
Right.
And a tick is only as good as the technology. And they still can't see, a tick really can't see some of that smoldering embers where your eyes and your gut and your intuition is going to tell you. So if I had to tell the people on this podcast anything, I would be to work on your truck company skills, work on your engine company skills, put the EMS book down for a while and go stretch a line. Be sure that your pump operator can get water to that nozzle within, a minute of arrival, and I've seen Engine 3, which is housed with us, do that just the other day on a fire. They have water on the fire within 45 seconds of pulling up on the building.
Right.
That's incredible. And that's what you want.
The only hiccup to that, the only thing, and I'm not disagreeing with you by any means, but the only hiccup to that is me and 360s.
Right.
So, but that comes down to training, getting in your reps, and all that. I totally agree. You got to get water to the fire as soon as possible. Absolutely, without a doubt. But I've noticed, and have talked to quite a few firefighters, that 360s are optional. And I totally disagree with that.
Right.
There's a way to do them, and there's a way to do them quick. Now, I know the crew you're talking about in Engine 3, they've always been great to get water on the fire. I mean, real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know the guy you were talking about on Engine 3. It's a superhuman. I mean, this guy is superhuman.
Right. He's making his mark in the world. He's an awesome.
He's one of those guys that you're going to hear his name probably in a few years. Like when you talk Jared Sergi, Mark Alone, Michael Snodgrass, Aaron Fields, he's going to be one of those. He's right there. Right there.
Yes, he is.
He's
you're right.
Inspiring. Hey, Cap, listen, brother, I have got to piss. All that beer has got my old man prostate just flared all to hell. So
absolutely.
I want to thank you for being on, brother. Honestly, all kidding aside, you've been an inspiration since I came on the job. I've seen you inspire other people. You're one of the ones that's going to be late at your own retirement party because you're going to be tying a knot or throwing ladders or cleaning the truck.